I want to welcome you all. I come down here every 8th or 9th day, been doing it for 14 years. And this is said to be outside of your treatment itself, probably the most important hour or so you spend while here, because this is the session where you find out exactly what's going on between your ears and your precious brains to bring this habit that's been plaguing you to an absolute screeching halt. Before we start, people oftentimes ask a question, and it's a fair question. They say, Pat, we understand Schick-Shadel, we believe, New England Journal of Medicine confirms it, the University of Washington confirms it, has the highest success rate of any treatment in the United States. But how come there's only one Schick-Shadel hospital, if that's true, and it just happens to be in Seattle? Well, gang, it wasn't supposed to be that way. This city is the center of creativity and new operations and new genius, and such was the case with this hospital that Dr. Shadel had created. Branches had grown in Santa Barbara, California, in Dallas, Texas, small branches around the country, and it was so successful. The Schick Razor Blade Company, with our salutes to them, their own names on the front of the building, but they sent their executives here and were so impressed that their executives came back with their drinking habit gone. They said, gosh, we'd like to own that. Boeing shouldn't buy a chain of latte stands. They don't make coffee, they make airplanes. The Schick Razor Blade Company shouldn't have bought these hospitals. I won't go into all the details, but they didn't do it real good. And Dallas went broke and closed. And Santa Barbara went broke and closed. And then the branches went broke and closed. And in 2002, the flagship of this great Seattle innovation that society needs so desperately, was going to close its doors. When 10 of us that owe our life to this place said, we can't let that happen. So we stepped up and bought the hospital. It was bankrupt practically at the time. Only 390 patients that year. But we started running. I said, I think if I do radio commercials, which is my background, and we'll do them on Monday when people have a hangover, and also when the commercials are the cheapest, I think we can start filling the beds again. And lo and behold, that first year, we did 690 patients. And the next year we went to 900, and the next year we went to 1,000, and we've been over 1,000 patients every year since then. Now then, we sold the hospital to United Health Services for one reason, and one reason only. And that is they have like 70 or 80 hospitals in the United States. They have the power to make this great Seattle medical innovation grow. And grow it must in a nation and a society that's just swimming in alcohol and drugs and is a mess. So that's the reason why there's only one Schick-Shadel hospital, and it's also why it ain't going to be that way forever. This treatment is going to grow. Thank you for letting me digress into that, but it's a fair question when you're here. Say, how come, if this is the best, how come there's only one of them? By the way, Seattle, I think in this region, is one of the innovation capitals of the world. And I think there's a reason for that. I think that people, way back 100 years ago, 50 years ago, families left Pennsylvania and New York and left Missouri and Illinois and moved west. And that took courage, right? We said, we're going to move out west. And as a result, those people showed great courage and great innovation. And as a result, I think your forefathers here in the West were very innovative, creative people. Because you look at what Seattle produces. Let's see, there's Boeing and PACCAR and Costco and Nordstrom's and Amazon and Microsoft, and the list goes on and on and on of the great things the Northwest has innovated and created. And Schick-Shadle Hospital is just one of them. I want to welcome you all. I'm so proud of you for coming forward and saying, I got a problem, can you fix me? And fix you we are. I make 2 points. Take both of these points to your hearts and your minds, back to your room tonight, out the door when you leave the hospital, and on through life. And if you truly incorporate these 2 points in your precious brains forever and respond to them, then these 10 days you're spending here are going to be the biggest game changers of your life. You, like thousands of others, are doing a turnaround that is just unbelievable. It's amazing. Who's here that on their 8th or 9th day of their treatment? How are you feeling?
Incredible.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? How can this happen? You came in here 8 or 9 days, you feel, boy, I guess I gotta quit drinking, and now you're feeling like $1 million, you know? Well, you're gonna find out what's going on after I have a sip of my coffee. I have a little bit of a dry throat. I make 2 points. Point number 1, listen carefully. It's so important for you to know that you have done nothing wrong. You are not guilty of anything. You're not low in intelligence, you're not low in integrity, you're not low in honesty, you're not low in love of others. There is nothing wrong with you. The only reason you are here is that you inherited genes as mankind was originally, that have been passed down for generations, that made you and the long-term use, and in some cases the short-term use of intoxicants incompatible. It was never going to work for you, and it never will work for you. And I know it will never work for you because you're here, because you became addicted. And you can't change that addiction because it's genetic. But in that you haven't done anything wrong, and I promise you, how old were you on your first drink?
15.
15. I'll bet you remember it. You say, yeah, it tastes terrible, but you got the little high, right?
It was a beer and a sandwich, and it tasted like crap.
Yeah, and later you had another and another. You didn't know it. But at the age of 15, each of you, when you had that first intoxicant, were taking your first step down a slippery slope. It was going to take you to health problems, job problems, relationship problems, financial problems, driving problems. Could have taken you to the grave by now. Could have taken you to the grave, but it brought you here. And thank God it brought you here so we can bring that problem that's not your fault to a screeching halt. We are not a shame on you hospital. We are damn proud of you hospital. You are great people, because there's hundreds of thousands of people out there tonight that should be here. They're not, you are. You stood tall, you admitted you had a problem, put your pride aside, and came to us. But in that you have done nothing wrong, and you haven't, I don't want you to be punished anymore. And you can't kid me, it hasn't been easy. People have talked about you, rolled their eyes behind your back, said you had a problem, couldn't be trusted, maybe thought you were hiding bottles here or doing stuff over there. How many are treating for drugs? You know what I'm talking about. They're easy to hide. They're easy to stow away. You don't have them on your breath, but people aren't trusting you. They know there's something going on. The 12-step people, and we don't knock them here. However, the 12-step treatments are over there, and we are over here. We're 180 degrees different. The 12-step people have a term called the recovering alcoholic or the recovering drug user. Have you heard that? My God, that's an ugly tag to carry through life. Because people don't understand the disease of addiction, and they diss you when you say, I'm a recovering alcoholic. You know, say, poor SOB is a recovering alcoholic. Probably falls off the wagon now and then. You know, can't trust him. You know, what a terrible tag to carry through life. But a big difference. Wait, recovering is a verb, isn't it? That means there's still something going on. Well, a great big difference when you leave Schick-Shadle Hospital, you'll not be recovering. You'll have recovered. It will be all over with. So our doctors had to come up with a way for you to describe yourself in a society where alcohol's everywhere. Now that we've legalized weed, oh, that's a great break for the people of Washington, right? There's so many drugs, so many. How can you escape those things and still deal socially with your old friends? And by the way, we're different. We don't tell you to kiss off your old friends. My God, you spent a lifetime building those relationships. You can't bust away from them. And why should you? Because you're going to be delivered from the desire to use the substance. Now, we're going to suggest that you build some new friendships too that you can enjoy with your clean living, but don't kick your old friends out the door. But anyway, you have to survive in a world that alcohol is everywhere. So our doctors, bless their hearts, came up with a couple of terms for you to use so that you can avoid using the substance and not feel embarrassed. Not saying I'm a recovering alcoholic and I can't, you know, never mind that. As a matter of fact, we don't want you to say you're sober. Do you know why? Sober's the opposite of drunk. Anybody who says, I'm sober, they used to be drunk or used to be addicted. Why should you punish yourself, right, over something that wasn't your fault? Anyway, our doctors came up with two terms. Term number one relates to drug use. We only have one person treating for drugs here tonight, but it's a simple term. It says, thanks, I'm a non-user. That's it. Thanks, I'm a non-user, I'm just fine. Thanks, I'm a non-user, I'm okay. And if they say, yeah, but you used to use it, I'm better off without it. Isn't that an easy way out? Rather than I'm a recovering user, you know. No. And for alcohol, the term is simple as a paper clip. Listen to this one. Thanks, I don't drink. Thanks, I don't drink. I'll have a Coke or something. Thanks, I don't drink. You have a cup of coffee? Thanks, I don't drink. I'm just fine. And the interesting thing about those terms is that the person who asks you or the people around you won't go any further, because deep inside there's admiration for your point of view. There's admiration for your behavior, even among the worst of them. They admire you because they know deep inside the impact that it's having on them. Thanks, I don't drink. And if they say, but you used to, say, I'm better off without it. Simple as that. What great tools for you to escape any embarrassment, because we asked you to, you don't dump your old friends. You should probably find some new ones too. But your old buddies, your old girlfriends, it's okay, you can be with them when they drink. You don't drink, you don't do it anymore. But now you have a way to explain yourself. So let me hear those words coming out of your mouth. First of all, we only have one person treating for drugs tonight, but let me hear it. Thanks, I'm a non-user.
Thanks, I'm a non-user.
Good. And thanks, I don't drink.
Thanks, I don't drink.
Yeah, but you used to.
I'm better off without it.
I'm better off without it. Thank you. That's point number one. Point number two is pretty complicated and takes the whole next hour that I start after a sip of my coffee. Again, I got kind of a dry throat tonight. I can't get into point number two without telling you how this incredible treatment, this treatment that now is ratified by the University of Washington. They came here, I don't know if it's been explained to you, they came here and studied 30 patients. And prior to treatment, they held up their drink or whatever they were treating for, and they did MRI brain scans, you know, those tiny sections of the brain, and lo and behold, orange and red splashes of excitement. And then following treatment, they did the same thing, and there is that same patient's brain. And that was replicated with 30 patients. The excitement, the desire was gone. The University of Washington said, this is over the top. We've never seen anything like this. And the University of Washington ratified that we are better than 2/3 successful with the one treatment. And better than that even when people come back a second time. Anyway, Dr. Charles Shadle, who created this thing, was out at the University of Washington. Something troubled him. His fellow doctors and the other professors and so on referred to people that had a drinking problem as drunks. They would say, well, they're just drunks. But he noticed the degree of addiction and the use of alcohol was even bigger amongst his fellow doctors, the other professors, the big deals of Seattle. They had martinis at lunch. They drank at lunch. They drank after work. He said, just a minute. This doesn't have anything to do with place in life or lifestyle. He says, because he saw families, some families quickly had young people or members of the family that became addicted, and some families could drink or not drink. And he said, gosh, there's something strange there. How is it that they become addicted and enslaved to it, and these people can do the same thing but not become habitual? He said, I think it's in the genes. Boy, that was earth-shaking at the time. Nobody believed that. If you had a drinking problem, you had bad company or bad upbringing or hanging with the wrong folks or you were weak or stupid or something. He said, no, I think it's genetic. I think some people have a vulnerability to addiction and some people have some kind of protection against it. He was joined by two other names we treasure, Doctors Lemire and Voetlin. Because they said, you know, Shadle, we think you're right. We have noticed that too. But how do we prove it? Well, they decided the only way to determine if it's genetic is to figure out why do some people have those genes and some people don't. Employing a class out at the UW, they determined, because the question was, we got to figure out when did the use of alcohol begin. About 11 to 12,000 years ago, around the Mediterranean, where grapes are in abundance. Mankind learned to mash them up and make a substance called wine. Now, you know that people 11,000 years ago, without medical help, had the same problems that people have today. they get, and listen to this, they get pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, throat cancer, jugular cancer, rectal cancer, colon cancer, all sorts of problems in the body with no medical help of any kind. And those with normal genes quickly began to diminish as hundreds and thousands of years went by. It's my mom, tell her I'm busy. You get to edit that, okay? Anyway, so they figured that those people that had the normal genes died younger, didn't propagate their species. You understand, over thousands of years, that you filter out the people with the weakness, and you end up with a civilization with one characteristic, and that is they are not impacted or become addicted to the substance. And as a result, you have a civilization today around the Mediterranean. I'm sorry, we're busy. Unless you're coming in to watch. We have a civilization today around the Mediterranean that can drink and get away with it and not become addicted. As a matter of fact, their want for the substance is hardly existing. And this is not a knock on Islam, but the Islamic faith, as you know, totally disallows the use of alcohol. How can they get away with that? Very simple. The people don't want it anyway, because they have those original genes. Now, those genes have spread into other societies as thousands of years have gone by, just as blue eyes have moved around the planet, and blonde hair, and so on and so forth. But for the most part, people around the Mediterranean are heavily loaded with those genes going back thousands of years. The Catholic Church in 1500 studied their congregations in Italy and their congregations, the Orthodox congregations in Greece, and determined that only about 3% of their congregations were addicted to wine. And as a result, then and today, the Catholic Church serves wine with communion. But the reason they made that study is that the Protestant churches that were springing up in Northern Europe, the offshoot of the Catholics, were reporting high levels of intoxication. You see, up there, they'd only developed alcoholic drinks about 3,000 or 4,000 years before, learning to mash up corn and barley and hops and so on. And they were finding their congregations were highly vulnerable to addiction. So they switched to grape juice. And today, the Catholic Church serves wine with communion, and the Protestants serve grape juice with communion. And it goes all the way back to there, and it all has to do with our genes. And you look at the Norwegians and the Swedes, Denmark, Finland, Ireland, Scotland, England, Russia, all areas of Northern Europe, high levels, dangerous levels of addiction today to alcohol. In 1991, I was hired, the Iron Curtain had just fallen, and I, being a broadcaster of some renown, was hired to put the first rock and roll radio stations on the air in Russia after the Iron Curtain fell. Boy, was that an eye-opening experience. I had graduated from this hospital, Schick-Shadel, 5 years before, in 1986. So I looked with great interest at what was happening with vodka and the Russian people, and it was astonishing. I couldn't believe it. St. Petersburg's a classy city, has the Hermitage and the opera houses and the art galleries, and sitting on Main Street, leaning up against the front sitting on the sidewalk, leaning up against the front of a classy department store at 11 o'clock in the morning, you see ladies and gentlemen drinking vodka straight out of the bottle. And you see Russian ladies and gentlemen passed out of the sidewalks in the afternoon, and they move them out of the way or step over them. Now listen to this. Life expectancy in Russia, people that are just as good as we are in every way, shape, or form, that have all the medical devices we have, the MRIs, the CAT scans, the prescription drugs, everything that we have, life expectancy in Russia today is 17 years less than in the United States. 17, how can that be? They're drinking themselves to death. Vodka is killing the Russian people. Putin says he's going to do something about it, and he is concerned because it's just devastating his society. Anyway, because they're bad people? No, because of their genes. Because of genes like I have and like you have. Same thing is true with most people in Africa. But the real laboratory situation that caused Dr. Shadle to Mirror Volton to say, we are 100% right, was when they studied Native Alaskans, Native Americans, and Native South Americans. Only exposed to alcohol for 300 years, never touched by any of these genes, and universally devastated by alcohol and intoxicating drugs. Anybody here tonight from Alaska? Boy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean it, and the same thing is true with our Native American tribes and South Americans. In Mexico, you go down there, and the true Mexican people are just absolutely destroyed by alcohol. It's terrible, the addiction. Because they're bad people, they're just as good as you are, just as good as anyone on this earth. But it all gets down to genes. That's what Dr. Shadle said. I think it's in the genes, and boy, was he right. But what are you going to do about it? Yes, they knew it was in the genes now. It wasn't a matter of bad people or religion or upbringing or examples being set or lifestyle. Nope, it was in the genes. Some people could drink or use intoxicants and get away with it. Some people can't. But what do we do about it? What do we do about those people that are already trapped in the substance, trapped with addiction? One thing was very clear. What was being done at that time wasn't working well, because all of the treatments at that time, and frankly most of the treatments today, only focus on the conscious portion of the human brain. That's the part we're using here tonight. I'm talking to you, you're listening to me, looking at the board. This is being done with the conscious portion of our brain. But talk therapies, which only enter the conscious portion of the brain, clearly don't have the power to put the fire out completely. How many of you have treated elsewhere? The hands are up throughout the building. You know, you cared, you said, I got to do something about this habit. You went, you tried, you swore you'd quit, you meant to, you did your best, and somewhere along the line, you fell right back into the soup again. Because you're bad people? No, I told you, you are as good as anybody on this earth. You fell back into the soup again because the conscious portion of the brain that talk therapies attract and deal with, that portion of the brain doesn't have the horsepower to shut off this habit. You cared, you tried, you swore you wouldn't do it again. Bingo, you fell right back into it. Because that treatment doesn't change Well, what is going on? Where is that treatment anyway? I mean, where is that addiction? Shada, Lemire, and Volan said, we got to figure out where in the human brain is the addiction. Because nobody knew. They knew that people were addicted, but it's not their eyes or their ears, and the brain's a massive, complex thing. Where is the addiction? It's in the pleasure center of the brain. You've all heard of the pleasure center of your brain, haven't you? Pleasure center of our brain causes us to do just about everything we do. The pleasure center of our brain is triggered by receptors. We have receptors for sound, smell, taste, hearing, sex, massage, all sorts of things. And when those receptors are triggered, they shoot dopamine into the pleasure center of the brain, and that causes us to do just about everything we do in life. Because we want to have approval, we want to feel satisfied, we want to enjoy pleasure, we want to enjoy things that taste good, that sound good, that smell good, that feel good, and all of those feelings have receptors. Like it could be your favorite steak or a flower that you look at. Let me give you an example. How many of you like looking at Mount Rainier? Well, isn't that wonderful? We will just stand there and look at it and say, God, oh, look at that. Now, we wouldn't stand and look at a tree, would we? But we look at the mountain because that vision is giving us a giant shot of dopamine. And because that dopamine is pouring into the pleasure center of the brain, making us feel good, we continue to look at the mountain. We get up in the morning, take our shower, shave or blow dry our hair or whatever, get our makeup on. We finally look in the mirror and we say, okay, that's as good as I can look, I'm ready to go, right? We give ourselves that approval because that vision shot dopamine to the pleasure center of the brain, and when the dopamine hit, we said, okay, I'm good to go. We have receptors for all sorts of things. But Shada, Lemire, and Volan determined that you, or you wouldn't be here, have a couple of receptors in the pleasure center of your brain. They are receptors as mankind was originally, unaffected by these genes that developed around the Mediterranean, and those receptors cannot handle intoxicants without becoming overexcited. They absolutely, immediately, you had your first drink when you were 15, right?
Yeah.
But soon you had another, didn't you?
And another.
And another. Because your receptor said, oh, God, I love that stuff.
Only for 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Those receptors get excited. And those receptors start reprogramming the brain. Now we get home from work and we've had a busy day, right? We've worked hard. We're feeling good about ourselves. We head for the refrigerator, we fix a drink. And bing, we throw the drink down. A little bit of alcohol races through our blood vessels, through the capillaries, and just a teeny amount touches those receptors, and bingo, we get a big shot of dopamine, and oh, does that feel good, right? Oh, except in about 15 minutes, we're not feeling as good as we did when we threw that drink down. Because alcohol is also a depressant. Yes, it triggered the receptor that made the dopamine go into the pleasure center of the brain, but the rest of the alcohol is floating through the brain, and as a depressant, it brings us down. So in 15 minutes, we're not feeling as good as we did when we had that first blast, right? So we go to the refrigerator, we fix another. Bingo! Another blast of dopamine. Bingo! More depressing alcohol pouring through the brain. And then there's drink number 3 and drink number 4. And now the alcohol, yep, we're still getting the shot of dopamine, but the alcohol is starting to do big time damage inside the brain. Big time damage. Losing control, losing your temper, losing equilibrium, thinking up crazy things in the past that bug you, right? That you're mad at this, that, and, you know, I'll tell you something funny. We get up from work, we have that drink, and, excuse me, after about 3 or 4 drinks, we think we're the smartest human being God ever created. Did you ever notice that? Oh, we're geniuses. And in that we just discovered how smart we are, we think we better decide stuff. You know, we didn't know that morning we were that smart, but now so we decide to buy a car we can't afford, or we're going to tell our boss to shove it up his rear. You know, we're going to tell our mother-in-law to go to hell. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. Here's the problem. The human brain doesn't have a reverse garbage detector. We get up in the morning and we can't separate our sober thoughts from our drunk thoughts. And as a result, we have gone out in the past and done the stupidest things that our sober brain would never ever do. But our intoxicated brain decided we could do it, and we can't tell the difference between our sober thoughts and our drunk thoughts. The beauty of this treatment, gang, is heretofore when you leave here, all of your thoughts are going to be sober thoughts, and your batting averages in life are going to improve incredibly. It's going to be amazing, the winning streak you're going to be on. Anyway, Shada, Lemire, and Voltland said, okay, the problem is the receptors. That's great. What do we do about it? What are we going to do about it? Because unless we take them out of commission, we're wasting our time. We may as well just do the talk therapy. We got to figure out a way to put them to sleep, and away they found, thank goodness. At the top of your spinal column is your main brain, also known as the subconscious. It's our real thinking machine. This is just kind of our communication device, BS machine, excuse me. But the real us is in our midbrain. They determined they would treat 2 portions of the midbrain and to bring the habit, because they thought if we could put those receptors to sleep, listen to this, they said, we think we could create a treatment that could bring people a life of sobriety in just 10 days. Whoa, that had never been heard of. People said, you got to be crazy, right? Okay, we're going to take a break right now. Do you want to stop the camera for a minute? Shada, Lemire, and Voltland said, how are we going to take those receptors out of commission? Because if we can remove them, you see, they've been wiring the brain with all kinds of rationale so that they can have that substance that they so desperately want. We find that patients come here and you think it's original, but you all say the same things because those receptors wire the same thoughts through all brains. Let me give you an example. I don't drink nearly as much as some people. Did you ever hear that one? How about, I could quit if I want to, I just don't want to right now. Okay. I needed to relax, I work hard. You know, those receptors, in their desperate crying out for the substance, have created those thoughts. So Shadle, Lemire, and Volin said, we've got to put them to sleep. But how to put them to sleep? Clearly, this portion of the brain doesn't have the horsepower to do it. We've got to go to the subconscious, the midbrain, which starts at the top of our spinal column. 2 portions of the midbrain were addressed to halt the habit. Thank you for coming back. Portion number 1, and not the most important of the 2 portions, but portion number 1, I vacation with a psychiatrist from UCLA in Mexico every year. He and I are golfing buddies. He says, by the way, what you guys are doing, you are so far ahead of everybody. You got to make this treatment grow. I said, boy, are we trying. He goes on to explain that this is the fail-safe for the conscious. Life is a platter filled with good news, but also filled with bad news. We can't avoid it. A job we lost, an accident we had, a parent that died, a divorce we went through. Who knows? Life is going to have good news, but also bad news. But if we carried the bad news around in the conscious portion of our brain, we'd be so morose we couldn't even function. So we bury it up here in what my shrink friend calls the fail-safe for the conscious. In other words, but those thoughts, we can pull them forward and think about them if we want to, but we're not confronted by them constantly. However, Shadle, Lemire, and Volin knew that the person who has been addicted, that because alcohol's a depressant, the controls on those bad thoughts have been reduced, and as a result, they've been coming forward and growing in importance. Things from the past that weren't that important in your precious brains have begun to haunt you. Things from the past, anger and irritation of this, particularly when you've had a couple, 3 drinks, you start getting angry. And your controls are unleashed, and God, you're just in a rage over stuff that happened 10 years ago, right? Shadle, Lemire, and Volin said, we got to clean this up if we can send patients out the door after 10 days in tip-top mental health. And clean you up they did. We created our sleepies. You know how they work. Using originally sodium pentothal, which was called truth serum, but sodium pentothal was misused by some legal authorities, so the switch now is to propofol. Propofol is a substance that puts the conscious portion of the brain sound asleep so we can have a real honest conversation with you in your midbrain, with the real you, with the purpose of relieving you of those things that are haunting you from the past. Things from the past that have grown out of proportion because of the depressing aspects of alcohol. Now, your counselor has given you some notes on what you've said, but other than those notes, do you have any idea, any clue what you said? You have no idea, do you? Well, we didn't ask you if you'd ever robbed a bank or something like that. But what we do is we say, think about those things that trouble you. Think about them. And you sit there with your eyes wide open and you say, what troubles you the most? And you say, oh my God, you know, and you tell us about this and that and the other thing and the other thing. And then we say, forget it. Put that behind you. That's the past. You can't do anything about it. You're starting a brand new life. Don't let that trouble you anymore. Do you notice how good you feel when you wake up from your sleepy? You feel great, don't you? That's not because you're drugged. That's because you offloaded some anxiety and some past that you don't need to carry with you anymore. because you can't do anything about it. Like they said in The Lion King, Hakuna Matata, right? It's the past, it's over with. It's too bad that in itself won't halt the habit. It certainly goes a long way and sends a strong signal down to those receptors and said, boy, I wish you wouldn't trouble me anymore. But that is not, oh, we do one other thing. In your sleepy, we ask you if you will ever drink again or whatever you're treating for. Let me tell you what I did. I came here after an intervention. My life had been in rock and roll. I was a disc jockey. Back when Dick Clark's American Bandstand was going on, I created a whole circuit of teenage dances across the state. I actually carried, I'm not bragging, but so you can relate, there was no FM then. I actually had shows in the afternoon here in Seattle where I had 38% of all radio listening in the 3 counties. So we had dances, and then I started running concerts, and then I brought the Beatles to town, and I'm running concerts in the Coliseum with the Righteous Brothers and the Rolling Stones and the Mamas and Papas, and all the acts are telling me that they like working for me better than anyone, because I was honest with them, made sure the sound was right, the lights were right, everything was good. I said, why not? So we changed the name of the company from Paddle Day and Associates to Concerts West. I sent my partner Terry Bassett to Dallas to open an office. We got Danny Kaye, the movie star, and Lester Smith, who started the Mariners, to help us with the funding. And we went on to become the biggest concert company in America. What we did had never been done before. We would pay all the expenses. We would handle all their appearances. We would pay all the expenses of the buses, the trucks, the jets, the advertising, the insurance, the tickets, the hotels, everything. All the act had to do was show up and play. And at the end of the tour, we'd sit down, pay the bills, give the act 85% of the profits, and we would keep 15%. And that had never been done before. And it was a crazy idea. But my buddy Jimi Hendrix liked the idea. He was our first client. And then there was Bad Company and Creedence Clearwater and Rolling Stones and the Mamas and Papas and there was Linda Ronstadt and the Eagles and Jackson Browne and the Beach Boys and Chicago and Led Zeppelin and Bad Company. And we got a call from a manager in 1969 that heard what we were doing, and this hadn't been done before. And he really wanted us to handle his act. But he said, I'll only give you 10%. My guy gets 90%. Well, we succumbed to his greed because it was Colonel Parker and the guy was Elvis Presley. And our little Seattle company handled every single appearance of Elvis from 1969 until his death. But in the middle of that whole thing, the guy that stands before you, I became very addicted. I'd always been a drinker, and now the cocaine was everywhere and the weed was everywhere. And you know, after a Zeppelin show, we had a Boeing 707, okay, that was made up like a living room, and we would use that for different. When Elton John was with us, we'd write Elton John on the tail. And when Zeppelin, we'd write Led Zeppelin on the plane. You know, whoever the act, hey, they're proud of their plane, right? And of course, with Led Zeppelin, the record company would send over a nice big bag of cocaine that you put it on, it looked like Mount Hood. You know, you didn't want to be rude, you wanted to have your share. Anyway, a group of friends gathered in my living room one morning. I thought they were there to congratulate me for something, but nope, It was an intervention. And they said, Pat, we think you've gone too far and we think you need to get help. Oh, that was embarrassing. Oh my God, a couple of them owed me money. Who are they telling me that? I said, okay guys, if you come here and risk your relationship with me, and you are, okay, I hear what you're saying. I read about a place in California that's got a good golf course. It's a 30-day deal. I'll go down there and we'll get it under control. And they said, BS, you're going to Schick-Shadle. And I arrived here 2 hours later with my bathrobe and my slippers, one mad, angry, humiliated camper. I mean, I was just crushed. Okay, I'll go away for 2 weeks because I'm going to have to detox for 4 days. I'll go away to Schick-Shadle for 2 weeks and get them off my back. But if they think I'm all through drinking, if they think I've had my last joint, they got another thought coming. Gang, I walked out of here 2 weeks later. 33 years ago, this coming May, to never have another drink, to never have another joint, to never have anything, and never missed it for a second. That's the power of this treatment. Anyway, I tell you that because in your sleepy, they will ask you, are you ever going to drink again? Don't do what I did. I said, I really like this hospital, I like everybody here, and now I'm going to be able to drink socially and control it. Now that stupid statement, you understand that the doctors here felt that Schick's reputation was on the line with me being here, and they vowed I was not going to leave here with my habit, and as a result, the next day, they gave me what they said was the toughest Duffy they've ever seen. No, I'm not kidding. They took me back to room 13 in a wheelchair with a wash basin in my lap. I couldn't stand up. And I spent the afternoon kneeling in front of the toilet in room 13. And the next day in my sleepy, I said, I'll never drink again as long as I live. And I haven't. That's how devastating and how quickly this treatment can work. Anyway, it's too bad that this putting these receptors and the sleep therapy doesn't get the job done. But no, something more powerful has to happen. And that something more powerful is created at the top of your spinal column, at the entrance to your main brain, is the most powerful gland of any living thing on earth. Be it a fly, be it fish, be it birds, whatever. The self-preservation gland, it's actually called the reptilian gland. The compulsion to stay alive. A fly has it. A fly lands on your picnic table, you try and hit it, zing, he's out of there. That fly wants to stay alive. That fly has a tiny reptilian gland, but we as humans have massive reptilian glands. We have a compulsion to avoid harm and to stay alive. Shadle, Lemire, and Voltland said, we think that that gland, which is in control of the body, has the power to shut off those receptors. So they created what we call our Duffys and our Ferratics. Now, let's talk about that gland for a minute. You were 2 years old. Your mother told you, don't touch the stove, you'll burn your finger, right? It's hot. You thought she was lying. Yeah, she just wanted to keep you out of the kitchen. So one day you reached up, you touched it, you ran screaming and crying. I don't care if you live to be 300 years old. You will not stick your finger on a hot burner, will you? Because you're so smart? No, because your reptilian gland won't let you. You were 2 or 3, you'd seen birds fly, so you went up a couple steps in the living room and you jumped, and wow, that's big stuff. And you jumped from the 3rd step, and that summer you jumped from the front porch, landed on your knees, scraped your knees, ran in the house crying, and programmed your reptilian gland that there is a limit to the height from which you can launch yourself. And you carry that formula through life. Do you ever go up a ladder to wash your windows? Huh?
Yes.
If the phone rings, do you ever say, I'll just jump off the top? No, of course not. Your reptilian gland wouldn't let you because you programmed that gland when you were a youth. That gland is designed to keep you from harm. Shadowlamir Volin said, if we can employ that gland, we think that has the power to shut off those receptors. And it does. So our Ferratics and our Duffies were created. The Ferratics, as you know, who's on Ferratics here tonight? For people that have a frailty about them in the stomach or in some manner, we use the Ferratics. And the Ferratics are just as effective as the Duffies. We take you in the treatment room and have you just take all those things you drink and just swish them around. Oh my God, how ugly they taste. I mean, we've been mixing with margarita mix or ice or 7-Up or something, getting over our tongue and down as fast as we can so we get the high, so we never have to taste the stuff. But now we're having to taste it. Here's your Coors, here's your white wine. Oh God, swish it around. It is so bad. It tastes so ugly. And in the meantime, they're zapping you with electricity. The little band around the wrist, zap, zap, zap. The taste is there, and the reptilian gland is saying, don't do this to my body. I'm in charge of this body. This is a terrible experience I'm having. We're not doing this anymore. And with that zapping of the electricity and that horrific taste, it is shooting a signal to those receptors and saying, you're out of business. And with our Duffies, we've given you Epicac before you go into the treatment room. So we know almost to the moment that you're going to not feel so good. And we have you just swish them around for a while, right? So you too get the ugly taste. And then we say, okay, it's party time, bottoms up. Here's your vodka rocks, or here's your white wine, or here's your Coors, whatever. We get about 5 or 6 drinks in you, and the nausea hits. Oh my God, right? Oh, it is so, and we are so sick. And a powerful signal from the reptilian gland says, I'm in charge of this body. What you are doing is wrong for this body. I'm the boss. You receptors are out of here. And that's why after 10 days, who's 8 days along in your treatment? How do you feel about drinking?
Don't want to do it. I don't want to do that Duffy tomorrow.
How about you?
On the scale, I'm about a plus 29.6.
But you thought it was really neat when you came here. You know, you really liked it when you came here. You felt badly about having to say goodbye to it, didn't you?
But I never want it again.
Isn't that great? Because your receptors have been put to sleep, and once they went to sleep, your wonderful brain took over and said, now I'm back to normal. And those receptors will stay asleep the rest of your life if you don't wake them up. Who's back to recap or retreat? Anybody? It only took one drink, didn't it? You can't have one drink. One drink will send a minuscule amount of alcohol through your blood vessels, through your capillaries, and will re-trigger those receptors, and they will come back to life instantly. I'm going to tell you the story of a gentleman. I better not use his name because we're going on to YouTube with this. But he grew up in Las Vegas and went to USC School of Business. brilliant kid. Graduated, went to work for a corporation, then another corporation, then he got married, and then he went to work for another corporation, then he got married again, because there was a problem. He was a heavy, heavy drinker, and it was wrecking his life. He tried a couple of the rehab things down there. I won't mention the hospitals. You would recognize it if I mentioned them. But it didn't do any good. He'd go right back to it again. His doctor said to him, he said, you know, he said, there used to be a hospital here in Santa Barbara. It was called Schick Shadle. And he said, now it's up in Seattle. He says, I sent a couple of people up there, and they came back and fixed them. Why don't you try that? So he came up here and treated successfully, and went back to a great career, and he started a great company that ends with a .com, and I shouldn't mention that because we want to keep his identity quiet. And he's just a multi-millionaire. And he was living back in his hometown of Las Vegas, where he would play poker professionally in tournaments and on television. He didn't need the money. He did it for the joy of it. Has an IQ of about 150, okay? He was playing in a tournament at Caesars one night, and the barmaid came by and said, Mr. X, can I get you something to drink? He said, yes, I'll have Virgin Mary, please. She brought the drink. It was just a little one. He threw it down. He said, boy, that tastes ugly. And she came by about 15 minutes later. She was thirsty, and they were dealing the cards, and a lot of excitement, and the Klieg lights were on, the TV cameras were on. She said, would you like another? He said, please. When he finished the second one, he thought, God, I wonder, that has a strange taste to it. So when she came by again, he said, excuse me, he said, was that a Virgin Mary? She says, no, sir, that was a Bloody Mary. Isn't that what you asked for? He said, oh, damn. Oh, for good. Okay, I'll have one more and that's it. True. Here's a man with 150 IQ, and those two have triggered his receptors already. And before the night was over, he had 3 or 4 more, and he went home feeling like dirt. Feeling like dirt. Here is sobriety. His kids have been so proud of him. He'd been so successful, and he had accidentally woke up his receptors, and he, with all of his genius, he'd lost control already. Woke up in the morning, told his wife, I'm so embarrassed. He said, I don't. How did that happen to me? He said, I can't go back to Seattle. He says, I'm so embarrassed. He said, I can't admit to what. He said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to deal with it myself. He said, I'm going to the refrigerator, I'm going to fix one more, and that'll be it. Well, you know how that worked out. 5 weeks later, he was back here to treat, just an absolute mess. He treated with great success, and became one of the 10 of us that eventually bought the hospital from the Schick company. And I tell you that story because here is a guy with 150 IQ that accidentally woke them up with just one little Bloody Mary or two, turned his brain off, and he ordered the third one. And those of you that are back here to retreat, and you know that just one drink did it. You can't have one. Now, gang, to be honest with you, you can avoid it. I lived my life around alcohol. I lived my life around joint smokers. I'm a little bit nuts, okay? But if I can avoid it, you can avoid it. I have not had a sip of alcohol or any trace of an intoxicant in 33 years. I can do it, you can do it. Remember that your abstinence is your greatest treasure because you're all so bright. You're precious people. I know you're precious because you had the character to stand up and come here and say, will you please fix me? And fix you we are. You are just the cream of the crop. So guard your receptors with your life. Don't let anything nudge them back to life. And if they do come back to life, just get back quick. Just get back quick because we are the answer. Mama Schick will meet you at the front door, give you a big hug, give you 5 Duffies. Oh, it'll be so nice. Y'all understand this? Don't tell your doctor that I drew an accurate picture of the inside of the human brain. This is for illustration purposes only. I want to pass something out here. Would you pass these out for me? Let's see, here's 4 for the front row. There, take those. 1, 2.
Thank you, sir.
Cool.
Thank you, sir. This is on my refrigerator, actually.
Take a picture.
I gave my mom one too.
Don't try us at home, kids.
That would be bad.
It'll be bad.
I guess my mom
Oh, thank you.
My nephew, just real quick, he went through once, he had to come back about 5 months after he came out of treatment his first time.
Yeah.
He used NyQuil because he had a cold,
Yeah,
and it triggered the receptors.
it can, yes. Gentleman just mentioned to me a guy that graduated from here, and 5 months later, he was using NyQuil for his cold, and he got to liking the NyQuil pretty well. Woke up his receptors and relapsed and came back. Tell your doctor, by the way, that under no circumstances are you to be given any prescription or anything that's addictive. The world is filled with hot new cosmetic, from OxyContin to Vicodin to hydrocodone, so on. You can't touch those things. Tell your doctor, don't allow you to have them because they can wake up your receptor. I went through, this is kind of personal, but it was 6 years ago, 2012, that I was forgetting things. And I run a big golf tournament up in Salmon Island, and all of my friends are there, and they're telling my wife there's something wrong with Pat. Well, I was having a conversation with him, and halfway through a sentence, he turned and walked away. So they sent me to the hospital and did a MRI, and lo and behold, I had a tumor almost the size of a tennis ball had grown in my brain. It wasn't malignant, it was a meningioma, which starts as a speck and doubles in size every year. It had probably been there for 25 or 30 years, and it reached that point where it was shutting stuff down. Anyway, to make a long story short, went to Swedish Hospital. They sawed me all the way across the top, pulled my forehead down, took the tumor out, put it back with titanium screws, and they did that because I had told them again in front, they did that with conventional painkillers. Not one of the cute little hydrocodones or any of that was ever given to me. Those old painkillers work just fine. They're not the cute new ones, but they can cover your pain. You started to raise your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to understand what you were saying, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but what you were saying about the NyQuil, we should not take NyQuil, is that?
NyQuil now has a non-alcoholic NyQuil, and it was created just for that reason. So ask for non-alcoholic NyQuil.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, turn this over. Here's our 10 commandments. Pretty much a reflection of what I've been rambling about here. Number 1, never have that first drink. Now you know why. Number 2, never test. Don't take a sip to see if the stuff tastes as bad as you think it does. That's a test you'll flunk. Number 3, remember addiction's a disease you'll re-trigger with just one drink. That's all it takes. Those that are back here, how many drinks did it take to get you started? Let me hear it. Shout it out.
One.
Just one. Don't let that happen. Number 4, alcoholism was not caused by your weakness. It was not caused by the job you lost. It was not caused by the divorce you went through. Your alcoholism was caused by alcohol. Let's know what the real enemy is. The 12 steppers refer to, you ever heard the term dual diagnosis? Yeah, dual diagnosis says, we'll deal with your psychological problems, and then, after we've dealt with them, you can probably deal with your addiction. Schick Shadle says, no. Get the addiction out of the way, and then we'll see if there actually are any psychological problems. Okay? Number 5, the sober you is the real you. Begin enjoying who you really are. Had a young lady sitting on the right where you're sitting, sir, raised her hand. She was back for a 90-day recap. She said, Pat, when do I come down from the high? I said, what do you mean? She says, well, my husband thinks I've gone nuts. She says, I have repainted the kids' room. I repainted the bathroom, went to IKEA, put new cabinets in the bathroom, got the plumber to redo all the plumbing. She says, I'm putting a new countertop in my kitchen. I got plants lined up on the back porch. I'm going to have a flower garden. She says, I've never done things like this before. How long does this last? I said, sweetheart, how old were you when you started drinking? She says, about 16. I said, now you're 29, 30, so she's now 32. I said, you see, you've been gone so long, you don't remember who you are. This is not some temporary thing. This is the real you that's been buried in booze for 13 or 16 years. And you're all going to experience this to some extent. You're going to leave here saying, who is this in my body? Well, I'll tell you who it is. It's the real you. And many of you have not experienced the real you in months or years. But the real you will be the individual that goes out this door and heads home. So appreciate them, look in the mirror, tell them you love them, and treat them with kindness and protect them forever from what they've gone through. You got it? Go find exciting new things to do. You're going to have time on your hands. Be great if you find a new hobby or something new to and take up your time. Avoid preaching these matters to others. Just send them to our website, schickshadle.com. Develop your own philosophy of life. There's no two people in this room that are wired the same, because there aren't any two people on this earth that are wired the same. We are all different. We all have a special something about us. Figure what that special thing is about you and grow it and support it and cherish it and enjoy it. I don't know what it is. Only you know what is unique about you. But each one of you have a uniqueness about you. I know you do because you came here. It's a special kind of person that faces up to their problem and comes here. And let that special you go forth and find something to do that you're very proud of. Create friendships that comfort you. We don't ask you to dump your old friends. We do not say that. For God's sake, you've spent a lifetime building those relationships. Don't dump them. You'll spend less time with them because they get kind of redundant, you know. I mean, I told you I lived my life around drinkers, and I'm okay with it until they say, Pat, you're the best damn friend I've ever had, for the third time. Then I'm out of there. But you know what I mean. Find some new friends too. Find some new friends that you can enjoy conversation that makes sense and enjoy your time with. And finally, if for any reason you lose your sobriety, even for a moment, just hurry back. Just hurry back, because we want you to live that total life of enjoyment and pride. And remember to do your recaps. Our success rate falls down to about 50% when people don't do their recaps, and we're up real close to 90% when they do their recaps. The jury's back. Make sure you do your recaps. Got it? Flip this over. I put this picture of planet Earth on the back of our 10 Commandments for a reason. Oh, by the way, don't tell your doctor again that I drew an accurate picture of the human brain. That's just for purposes of illustration. I put the globe here on the back because it makes a point. What are the odds that this planet exists? The Hubble telescope is now looking out into the universe 10,000 light years. Now that's how far you travel in a year at the speed of light, or the speed of sound, which is 186,000 miles a second. Now you imagine traveling at that speed for all those years. That's what the Hubble telescope has seen out there, has found 1 trillion pieces of planetary mass, but has not found another planet Earth. That means the odds of this planet, this beautiful thing on which we live, are at best 1 in 1 trillion. And we get to live there. Aren't we lucky? But if you think those odds are long, after I have another sip of my coffee, I got something funny for you to think about. It was 11,000 years ago, just about the time they were starting to drink wine around the Mediterranean, a young man walks out of the woods in an area that we now call Germany. And he turns to the left, and a young lady from a neighboring tribe comes out of the woods at the same time. She turns to the right. They're attracted to each other, they mate, and out there in the wild, with no medical help of any kind, she maintains her pregnancy, and then a child is born, and the child survives. I mean, just amazing, with no help of any kind. The child's a little girl. Now, this is not a planned thing. This is just something that, about the same time, hillside or so away, there's a creek that runs along, and a young man's going up the stream, probably trying to catch a fish. Young lady's trying to fill a cask with water to take back to her cave. They meet, they're attracted, they mate. Another miracle of birth, a little boy is born. Just a coincidence now. And then 18 or 19 years later, little boy runs across little girl in the woods. They're attracted, they mate. Another miracle of birth. And these miracles, these coincidences, go on for 10,800 years. Think about the things that have happened over 10,800 years. Coincidence and birth and miracles. In the meantime, over here in an area we now call Spain, kind of the same deal's going on. Young man's going across the plain, hunting a rabbit to take back to his group. Young lady's looking for some grain to make some kind of pastry. They meet, they're attracted, they mate. A baby's born, It's a little boy. Same thing's happening over here. A little girl is born. These aren't planned deals now, right? These are just amazing miracles and coincidences. 18 or 19 years later, little girl meets little boy. They mate, they're attracted. Another child is born. These things go on for 10,800 years. And then, 200 years ago, an individual that came from all of these thousands of years of coincidences came across the Atlantic to a place called America, as did a descendant of all of these coincidences. And maybe in North Carolina or New Jersey or Massachusetts or somewhere, they met, they fell in love, they got married and they had a child. And the same thing was happening over here and over there. And then people moved out to Pennsylvania, out to Colorado, out to California, moving around. The coincidences continue. None of this is planned. It's all just crazy, crazy coincidences and miracles. And they go on until your mother met your father, and the sperm hit the egg at just the right moment, and you were born, and you're here. You survived. Now let me tell you how lucky I am, and you are. Remember that if this guy would have turned to the right instead of the left 11,000 years ago, you wouldn't be here. No, think about the crazy things that have happened over thousands of years that have allowed us to enjoy life on this planet, and enjoy life in the United States of America. Now, we had a problem. It wasn't our fault. Now you know why. It was not your fault. You have done nothing wrong. You have come here and you are correcting the problem. Now go forth guarding those receptors with your life. Because someday, gang, we all have to lay our head down on the pillow for the last time. And if we have guarded those receptors and maintained our purity all those years, we'll be able at that moment to say, damn it, I hate to go, but I've done it the best I can. You all agree?
Agree.
I love you. Good night.